Yo, what's up, guys? I'm back with another Smite meta update. I missed last week, because I'm not gonna make any excuses. I'm fucking lazy, and I didn't do it, and I just kind of ignored it. But we have changes to talk about this week, whereas last week we didn't really have that much to talk about. Um, for starters, Hunter meta's actually shaken up a bit. Still think Cupid is kind of cream of the crop. He's still the best, and a lot of characters are picked around him based on the ability to avoid his ultimate, not having to burn beads or using another resource to do it, you know. But characters like Ho Yi still see play, but I feel like Cupid and Heimdall, Ho Yi, Charybdis, Chernabog are kind of really good right now. But interestingly enough, Sardanos is back. With the recent changes to some of his abilities, I think it's just higher damage. I completely forgot what it was exactly, but higher damage numbers, basically. He's become a much more prevalent threat in both ADC and actually in mid lane. He's been played in the SPL in mid lane a couple of times now, and it's definitely something you can run ranked because he does something very, very similar to a lot of other mid hunters, and that is pressure. Because mages kind of lose pressure to hunters. That's what they do. Hunters out pressure the mages. But those are kind of your main ones. If you're going to look at traditional magical hunters, I would look at Freya or Sol. Maybe Kronos, maybe Oleron, but I guess like Freya and Oleron and Sol are kind of the main ones. Kronos is kind of always in a weird spot. When he's too good, he gets nerfed or his items get nerfed, and then he's completely out of the meta for a while. But some other picks that we have seen in the duo lane recently, Vulcan. Vulcan's kind of been slamming it in duo lane, and whenever he comes back, he always plays mid and carry. He plays both roles because he can do the same thing. He builds a Warlocks, or he builds some stacking item, he builds a pen, and just does damage. The small change, quality of life change of letting him backfire through cripples has made this character much easier to maneuver with, and he's a lot safer than he was before. So characters like Poseidon and Ares don't instantly just destroy him. They take away one of his main damage sources, or it's one of his main damage sources by just existing near him and using their abilities. He's much more consistent, and his damage is very good. And if you're a mid or a carry player who's looking for something new, definitely pick up Vulcan. On to the supports. I hate to say it, but not much has changed here. Yamoja, Ymir, Kabrakan, Ganesha, Atlas, Bacchus, Terra, Sylvanas, Khepri, all really good picks. You can kind of just slam them down. Artio is seeing a bit more prevalence just because Terra's seeing a bit more prevalence. Also because of Fae Blessed Hoops and how good they are. But, Artio support is always in a weird spot because she either runs out of mana way too often and she feels really ineffective, or she's like the most oppressive thing on the map and you just hate playing against her. There's really no in between. As always, Ares is still very strong for ranked if you're good with him. Other than that, though, I would just stick to the ones I mentioned. In terms of warrior supports, they're pretty out there. I mean, there's very few that you could really play right now. Horus and Mulan are kind of like the main two warrior supports you can kind of stick with. Tyr's okay. Shiva's okay. And that's really it. Hercules is just bad. You cannot be playing Hercules right now. His kit just inadvertently just ruins his own combo ability and his team's ability to CC a target, because he immediately applies 3 stacks to DR them just by playing the character. So it's really bad for him right now. Assassin supports, Naja and Serket, very prominent right now in the assassin support. Ratatosker support is also another thing you can do, but Naja and Serket are kind of like the main two. Mid lane, I would switch out of this tab, but assassin mids are kind of coming back. Set being the best of them, as per usual. Set is a very good laner. He plays every role but support. The only reason this character doesn't play support because he has no CC in kit. If he had a CC ability, you'd probably see him in support too. This character is ridiculous. I didn't mention him in the carry section because I wanted to talk about him more here. But Set plays 4 roles. He does very well in all of them. Whether you build him damage or hybrid, in mid lane you're going to build him full damage. Late game you still are just a terror in the enemy backline. You can kill people super quickly. and you have a lot of pressure in mid because you're an assassin. You have those base numbers. You have that scaling. You build Transcendence, and you just kill people. It's really what it is. Susanoo's another one that you can run. Susanoo, Pele, Naja has been another one, but I'd say he's a little less effective. Pele, Susanoo, Set are kind of like the main ones you want to look at. Another thing, I'm not going to the Mage tab yet, because we're finally talking about Atlas mid. This is something, full damage Atlas has been something I've been clowning around with, and a lot of people have been playing with, and it's just been a matter of time before it becomes a legit strategy. A lot of high-level teams were using it in scrims, but weren't pulling it out in ranked because it was kind of inconsistent. When the flat pen changes happened, when they nerfed the flat pen, it kind of fell out. The full damage variant fell out because he needed that flat pen. It was changed back, and now he's back to doing what is essentially an AoE Thoth ult, a giant circle Thoth ult to carries in the late game that is much harder to Aegis. I say that because you're not expecting to Aegis it. The Thoth ult sound you expect to Aegis, but you kind of have to condition yourself to Aegis a 900 damage Atlas ult flying at your face because you're not used to that. Atlas does really good damage. He has good CC. He has decent safety, and overall he just explodes people when built full damage. It's nuts. Still not going to mages. Because like I said before, Cernunnos, Chiron, Ullr, AMC, all very powerful mid lane picks. Oh, I didn't talk about Ishtar. Ishtar's weird. I've seen her played in ADC, and she does pretty well. But I've seen her more played in a different role that I'll talk about in a minute. But Cernunnos, AMC, Chernobog, Chiron, Ullr, all pretty good mid hunters. You can run Cupid there. You can run Medusa. You can run Neith. They all feel pretty decent now. All right, finally I'll talk about the mages. Mages aren't great right now. The main problem with mages is that hunters outpressure them, assassins just kill them, and it takes them very long to get their damage online because their items cost a lot. Mages are still good. Eset, Morgan Le Fay, Merlin, The Morgan, Thoth, Yu Huang, Hades, all very powerful picks. The problem is, except for Hades, really, it takes them a bit to get online. Tiamat would be in this discussion, but a core part of Tiamat's kit just doesn't work right now. The bull is... Do you know what? I'm actually just going to show you.
It all belongs to us.
You can see why that's a problem. And that is a very core part of Tiamat's kit and how she most of the time confirms her stun. And it's incredibly useful early game. And she essentially just has an entire tool that is completely robbed of her because they won't fix this fucking bug. This is a bug that is like, take her out of the game level bug they need to fix. In my opinion, because it's such a core part of her kit. The character is completely shut out because her fucking bull just launches in the other direction. Regardless, flat pen's coming more in the build. The Warlock's build is still really prevalent. But the characters I mentioned before, Eset, Merlin, Morgan Le Fay, Thoth, The Morgan, Yu Huang, even Persephone is pretty good. They kind of are your best bets. Discordia's not bad, Nua's not terrible. But yeah. To move on to the junglers, this is where I'm going to talk about Ishtar. Strangely enough, in ranked, people have been picking up Ishtar jungle with varying success. It does the same thing that a lot of other hunter jungles did. However, her ultimate is a much more oppressive ganking tool because it immediately cripples out everything. She becomes CC immune, it cripples out everything. It doesn't have a very... I mean, it has a Q, an audio Q, but is good range, and she follows up with it very, very well. Her clear's not bad, but she does run into the same problems that a lot of hunter junglers did, and that is, if the assassin or warrior jungle on the other team just decides to walk at you with the mannequin scepter, you're fucked. That's all it really is to it. Back to the assassin tab. Set, again, is really rose up into prominence because he does absurd damage, and he could just carry a game by himself. Lancelot's still here, Hunbats, Daji, Kleena, Pele, Susanoo, all still here. Mercury doesn't feel awful, but he doesn't feel great. Rat's not bad. Nemesis isn't bad either. But I have to talk about him. I've avoided it long enough, I think. I don't remember if I talked about him in the last episode of this, but episode update, whatever. But Naja feels really good right now. I was actually banning him in ranked to prevent people from playing him beforehand as one, kind of a joke, and two, so that my teammates just didn't fucking miss everything with him, because you need to be hitting your things with this character. If you could reliably connect your abilities with him, as in Sash ult, this character feels great. His items feel really good right now, and you can build him multiple ways. However, I do think he feels better in solo lane, which I will talk about in a minute, but he feels good right now. But if you can't hit shit with him, practice with him first, or bring him into ranked. Warrior jungles have almost completely fallen out of the meta. The only ones that are really relevant are Osiris and Erlang, and the rest of them really don't feel that good. Osiris and Erlang feel okay at best. Sylvanas jungle is still prevalent. The full damage Sylvanas jungle, solo, mid, wherever you play him, is still prevalent. You could still run it. The mannequins, just full damage, explode people build. Your carries have to buy Shell instead of Aegis, or the carries have to buy Shell instead of Aegis, because you can't Aegis Sylvanas' damage the way you want to. Yeah. I guess since we're over here, we'll talk about solo lane now. Soul lane Guardians feel okay. Kabrakan feels okay, even though after the nerfs, he still feels pretty good. It takes him a little bit longer to clear, but not by much. Atlas feels pretty good in solo lane. Cthulhu feels decent. The full damage Sylvanas cheese still feels decent. I guess we'll talk about Hades next. Hades still feels nuts. His build is nuts. He does a fuck ton of damage. He explodes carries in the late game if he catches them, and he just wins. He just kills people, and that's what he's good at. It doesn't matter if you die, if you kill at least one or force relics, because then your team can clean up. This character does so much damage, has so much sustain, and he's just tanky overall. I guess we'll talk about the assassins next. He's back. Camazotz is back. And he feels like one of, if not the best soul laner in the game. Tainted Steel is actually a decently viable pickup now in counter of Soul Eater and characters like this guy. Camazotz has a ridiculous amount of sustain and a ridiculous amount of damage. He feels good with Warrior's Axe, and he feels pretty decent with Tainted Steel. With Warrior's Axe being a viable item, assassin solos have really come back into the meta, and Tainted Steel doesn't feel absolutely horrendous to build anymore because of Soul Eater and things like that. You can run Camazotz with either of these. You build him the Transcendence Blackthorn, like mostly damage, like with a CAD shield build that you did before, and he feels really good. Kleena, you can build her full damage, you can build her tank, you can build her full tank, you can build her hybrid. Just slap a Soul Eater on her, this character feels great. You literally, once you hit level 5, you have the ability to just say, I'm not going to interact with my lane opponent anymore. And you don't have to. And in late game team fights, you still do a metric shit ton of damage regardless of what you build. Lancelot does a ton of damage. He has decent sustain with Soul Eater. I've said this for the past month and a half, 2 months. Character's nuts. Play him if you aren't already. Susano, set for the same reasons before. He does a ton of damage. You build him a hybrid, you build him tank, you build him full damage. He does a shit ton of damage. Susano feels good. You build him hybrid, you build him damage. He feels good. Robin, same thing. Rat, you build him tank, you don't build him hybrid. Pelate, same thing. Naja, pretty much the same thing. You buy Soul Eater, spikes, tank items, and I usually finish out with the brawlers, and it feels good. Now to the Warriors. Guan Yu still top in terms of Warriors. Fabulous hoops and his recent changes make him feel very, very good, and late game he's very, very oppressive. Mulan feels really good right now, especially in ranked, because you can just kind of take a lead and snowball with it completely. King Arthur, Tyr, both still feel really good. Shiva feels pretty decent. Osiris doesn't feel bad. Cucullin doesn't feel bad. Bellona doesn't feel bad. A lot of these picks you could just kind of run. Achilles doesn't feel bad. Wukong feels pretty decent. But yeah. A lot of these picks you can kind of just run because the build favors a lot of picks right now. Glad Shield. Sovereignty's kind of fallen out of favor, so more Soul Eater-esque picks have made their place in the meta, but then there's picks like Guan Yu, which just hate both of those items. Well, Guan Yu doesn't hate Sovereignty, but don't buy it on Guan Yu. You buy Breastplate, and you have a ton of mana, and you heal for fucking ever. That's what you do on Guan Yu. You buy Fabulous Tubes, you buy Breastplate, and then you win the game. and you buy a cat shield, and then nothing else matters. Get a warrior's axe, win the game. Get a hero's axe and win the game. That's really it. But yeah, I think that's it. Peace.